Hello, this is a host of Stories from Mexico, and we are officially back. Today, we will be reading the stories of some people that became slaves to the Cjng. Lately, there has been a lot of news coming out of Jalisco, especially of the Cjng cartel, who was founded and is being led by El Mencho. There has been these cabments that have been discovered lately, and they are truly the worst of the worst. And today, we will be reading the story of what it is like to live in one of those camps. The cartel offered them jobs under false pretenses, but enslaved them and forcibly retained them. Today, they are part of a organized crime army, guarding drug fields or training as hitmen. They are alive, but they are missing. Luis is one of the survivors and recounts his days in this hell. When I escaped, I went very far away because I knew that wherever they saw me, they would kill me. I thought that if I went directly to the government, they would hand me over to the cartel. After a while, it came to light on the news that someone had been in the same situation as me, and that he had actually dared to speak out. And after I saw that, I set a goal to myself, and that was to try and bring peace and tranquility to the people that had lost track to their missing ones. And the sad truth is that many of those missing ones are people that I saw burned to death, and none of their relatives have realized how they have died or how they have disappeared unless I spoke about it. So I am willing to tell my story and risk my life to bring a little bit of peace to those families, so they don't continue to hope that those family members will be found alive. And that's when I contacted the Jalisco Attorney General office and told them that I was also deprived of my freedom in the Sierra de Navajas by the Jalisco New Generation cartel, and that I could identify 7 missing people who I saw die with my own eyes at the hands of our captors. Luis, whose name is fake for security reasons obviously, is a survivor of one of these camps where the cartel forced young people to train as hitmen. In early 2017, he was working at a rehabilitation center, and his salary wasn't enough, and he wanted to get away from the addiction scene. He looked for a new job using social media. In April of that year, he joined a Facebook page, Bolsa de Trabajo GDL and Trabajos Guadalajara. Through his inbox, he received a job offer of 4,000 pesos a week as a security guard. Immediately, he contacted the woman who sent him the message, and she asked him to get in touch with Mario, the company's shift supervisor. A week later, he was added to a WhatsApp group along with 15 other people interested in the same job. They were asked to attend a training session in the municipality of Tala, and they would be given 4,000 pesos in advance. Luis was excited. He never imagined that when he arrived for his first day on the job, they will put him in a safe house and then be taken to a camp in the Sierra of Ahuizculco, not to be killed, but to be trained and forced to work for the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Antonio Blancas disappeared after arriving in Tala for his first day of work as a security guard. He was also a student at ITSC. After that group arrived in Tala, they were never heard about. The families of some of them reported them missing, unaware that they were still alive and well in the hands of organized crime. The Jalisco Attorney General Office conducted operations in July 2017 and discovered training camps. In one of them, they arrested 15 men, 3 of whom had been reported missing, and they were able to verify that they were being held for ransom. The 3 were released, and their testimony was recorded in investigation file, as well as Luis. Thanks to their accounts and anonymous testimonies, we now know that dozens of men from the valleys of the Tequila region, the Guadalajara metropolitan area, and other states, and even Central American migrants were taken to the Ahuizculco mountain, and they were being enslaved and forced to do labor. This has been a recent tactic that the Jalisco New Generation cartel is doing to ensure that their operation and their business is running well. But they are also now recruiting with fake job applications. One of the survivors even recounts in his statements that he was walking at night in downtown Guadalajara when he felt a blow to the head. He was unconscious, and when he woke up, he found himself in a safe house. Through job advertisements on social media, the Cjng deceptively recruited men of various ages to join its military ranks. Many of their families reported them missing, unaware that they were alive and working as forced laborers. When the prosecutor's office carried out an operation, Luis was no longer there. He had escaped, but later decided to testify despite the risk involved. Luis recounts that when he contacted him for the job, he asked if everything was legal, and the guy told him, "Look, if it were illegal, we wouldn't send you to training so you could carry a gun. Don't worry, everything will be legal." I said, "Listen, is everything going to be okay? My mom's sick and I need to communicate with her." That's when Mario told me I was totally cool, that he'll come recommended to me, and I took a taxi to Periférico. 10 minutes later, a car pulled up. They asked if my name was Luis. I told them yes. I got in, and we went for another guy. We got into a very confusing place. A blonde guy with a beard, curly hair, and a chubby guy with green eyes came out. I now know his name is Ignacio. 2 women came out to see him. However, they didn't leave the entrance until we left. I saw the driver was nervous. He was chain smoking. I chatted with him, and he told me he had only been working here for a week, but that he hadn't been paid for his previous trips. It was May 1st, and they dropped us off on the highway, and a pickup truck arrived with 3 other guys from the state of Mexico. One had a prosthetic eye, another was thin with a prosthetic leg, and a third was chubby with a tuft of hair sticking out of his forehead. The driver was a dirty fat man who ordered us to get in the back. On the way, we learned that the 5 of us had been on WhatsApp the day before and had been contacted through job boards that we had signed up through Facebook for the job of bodyguard or security guard for 4,000 pesos a week. It seemed very attractive to us. They moved us to another car. We turned towards Tala, drove through a dirt road, and arrived at an abandoned farm with barbed wire and wooden poles. There was a man waiting for us that told us to continue inside. I noticed there was no furniture, just people on the floor. 38 of them piled up on the ground. That's when I realized I had gotten into trouble because this wasn't normal at all. Upon entering the room, they ordered us to be quiet and sit down, telling us we couldn't even go to the bathroom unless we asked permission. We were all humble and poor people. However, they looked like cholos, and others of them looked like they had nothing left to lose in their life. I realized I had crossed the line of not returning and that something bad might happen to me. In fact, I could smell a strange smell, and I could see the looks of sadness and misery on the people there. A well-connected operation. Tala, Ahuizculco, Las Navajas, and Cuisillos are town less than an hour from Guadalajara, just behind La Primavera Forest. You can get there via the free highway to Puerto Vallarta. After the forest, turn left to enter the Amera River Valley, where there are fertile lands filled with sugarcane fields and old haciendas. After Tala, the next one will be Ahuizculco, an ancient indigenous community that still safeguards are there to protect the forest and its springs. The town is at the foot of the mountain range of the same name, a volcanic formation that is actually a continuation of La Primavera Forest is there. On the other side of those hills is the town of Las Navajas, where the people of Ahuizculco who say crime became a thing there once people started to accept things that ended up compromising them. The town of Las Navajas is named for the large amounts of obsidian found in its soil, which centuries ago was traded as knives with the region of indigenous communities around them. Crossing the town, there is a gap that leads into the hills. On this road is one of the safe houses mentioned by one of the survivors, which was secured by the Jalisco prosecutor's office. Further up is the place known as La Reserva, the ranch that the mountain residents say belongs to a certain Don Pedro, the name by which Rafael Caro Quintero was known there. They say that Don Pedro arrived in the late 1970s, planted marijuana, fattened cattle, and controlled the region. Even after the Jalisco Prosecutor's Office operation in July 2017, the road was still guarded by trucks and young men on motorcycles. Those guys are known as halcones. This is the gap that all the survivors mention in their testimonies as the route that they took to climb the mountain. This mountain range, that is unnamed on the maps, is strategic for its connectivity. On one side, it has roads leading to the highway to Colima and Manzanillo, and on the other, it is connected to the Sierra Madre Occidental, which leads to the Pacific coast and Puerto Vallarta. Chemical precursors for synthetic drugs enter through the port of Manzanillo and are transported via the highway to Colima. Before reaching Guadalajara, they take the Circuito Sur or the Macro Libramiento, which leaves them a few meters from Las Navajas, where they enter the mountain range that serves as a hidden place for camps, graves, and drug labs. Through Cuisillos, they can access the highway that takes them to the north of the country or to Mascota and Puerto Vallarta. On July 29, 2017, the Jalisco Attorney General Office reported that between June 6 and 13, they received 6 reports of missing people. All of them reported at home that they were moving to a municipality of Tala. because they had obtained work as surveyors, bodyguards, or municipal police officers. Testimony of the mothers. Laura reported her son Ignacio missing on July 22, 2017. She was asked if she noticed anything strange the last few days she saw him. "I was desperate because I didn't have a job," Laura declared. He was 22 years old. He weighed over 100 kilos, had light brown hair, green eyes, and a tattoo on his forearm. He dropped out of high school. He told his mother he had found a job as a private security guard that would pay him 4,000 pesos a week. He would be going to Tala for 2 weeks for training. On May 1st, 2017, they picked him up at his house in a working-class neighborhood south of Zapopan. Ignacio left with a black and gray canvas backpack with a strap across his waist where he kept 3 changes of clothes: boxer, shorts, socks, and wooden brush, a plastic sandals, and a white sneakers. He didn't have a cell phone, and they weren't allowed to carry one anyways. His mother and sister went out to see him off. He got into a light brown car with 2 other men, the driver and another boy they had also just picked up. It was Luis. They never heard from him again. 2 months later, his sister saw on the news that people had been found enslaved in Tala. It was then that Ignacio was reported missing. Ernesto was also reported missing. He was robust, 5'10", tall. He weighed about 210 pounds, with a round face, light brown eyes, no tattoos, bite scars on his chest and left arm. He was wearing black jeans and a light blue polo shirt. At 26, he desperately needed to find a job. He had a son in early 2017 and he had no steady income. He was desperate when he found an offer online. On April 30th, they contacted him the next day. He left early, shortly before 7 a.m. They were going to pick him up at the Periférico in Mariano Otero, where he would be going to a training session in Tala. He told his mother and wife that he would contact them in a few days. Carla, his wife, called him at 10 a.m. to find out how everything was going. He told them they hadn't arrived yet. He told them he would call them whenever he arrived. He never called and he never returned. Rosa, his mother, reported him on May 8th, 2017. During the time Luis was trapped in the first safe house in May 2017, he began observing those who were watching them. He discovered that some had been captured like him and had already been able to go on vacation. I know because I saw who was in charge up there that they had already left and returned. And for Cjng, it doesn't really matter once they let you go. They don't really trust you. That's actually a test. And that's to see if you will come back and become one of them. Luis recounts that once he was in the house, him and the other individuals that were there were taken out and were put in pickup trucks. From there, they were taken to the highway through Cuisillos and they took them to Navajas, to another large farm with an iron gate like a cattle grid, 1 meter high, and it was unfinished. There was a man wearing a peasant hat who shouted at us, "Let's see, you son of a bitches. I'ma put you all in line. Let's get going. Let's get going. Does anyone know why the fuck you're here?" I couldn't say anything. They could kill me. He grabbed his gun and fired a shot in the direction of all of us. "I'm going to give you all a fucking vacation. If you come back here, there'll be work. And if not, fuck your mother, who wants to leave right now." Nobody said anything. One of them had me in check, yelling, Come on, Moreno, calm down. To calm down means to be agile, to act, to do things intelligently. We advanced to the summit, arriving at the camp that looked to me as one of the forest camps in the United States, being a private property that a woman rented from the man with the hat. The picture you are seeing is from a safe house that is located across the town of Las Navajas, Tala, Jalisco, next to the gap leading to the mountain peaks where the camps were located, with young people forced to train as hitmen, stand out, and try to survive. The abuse and the threats began in the safe houses. In addition to Luis, 3 other survivors were rescued by the prosecutor's office. In their statements to the prosecutor, they described how they went looking for work and were taken to the safe houses by the recruiters. In one of those safe houses, around 50 men were lying on the floor. They were beaten and threatened with being killed if they were to escape. We exercised all day, and they said those who obeyed were going on vacation or to rest. We were classified as new, semi-new, and old. The new ones were beaten all the time. There were always armed men watching them. A week later, they brought me and 4 other companions back in a van. Other armed men left me in a safe house where I could shower. It was then that we realized it was a different story. I heard voices saying we'll be working for the cartel. That's when I got scared. Those who guarded us used drugs, and I've never used drugs. I work, I have a family, I have children, and on the 23rd, they sent me back to the mountains, to a new camp. They made us build it with sticks, nylon, branches, and carry water and food. They beat me all over my body, telling me, "You're worthless, come on, asshole," and even called me a dog. We couldn't sleep until midnight, and whoever did, they either set them up to hit them with paintball or they just killed them. The guards shot 2 of them because they went to the OXXO without his permission. They asked the others to take the bodies down to a ravine where a stream runs. They made me chop wood and branches, and they burned them. Later, during the conversation, I learned that they had all been taken under false pretenses. There were 20 of us, just like me, in a camp an hour from the town of Cjng, where they made us sleep in the open air, and they subdued us by telling us that we had to ask permission even to go urinate, and if we didn't, they would beat us. From what I remember, one day we were carrying things. We went to a stream, and El Momia said to Checo, who had tattoos of his daughter's birth dates and his children's names on his necks, "Kneel down. This is so you don't disobey my orders." He shot them and he fell dead. Then he shot another one. They took them down to the stream, took off their clothes, and followed instructions. They put them on a bed of firewood with leaves and wood, lit them on fire, and waited until they were completely burned. We walked for 30 minutes and arrived at a camp built with 3 poles and a black plastic. It also had trash and branches. I noticed 3 people were outside with weapons. We went inside, and inside there were more people lying down, about 20 of them. So we got into the camp, we lay down and went to sleep as best as we could. But as soon as dawn broke, they got us all up and lined us up. They started telling us we were going to be trained to work as hitmen for the Jalisco New Generation cartel, and that if we resisted, they would kill us. They made us train, forcing us to do exercises, and they had paintball guns to train us with. They were vicious, shooting those kinds of bullets at us. On July 24, 2017, I remember it was a Monday. They picked us up and made us carry plastic and food supplies. The manager received a call to get their act together because black and white trucks were coming to the hill. 3 of them started shooting at them, and all I could do was run to the bottom of the hill to protect myself from the gunfire. Police surrounded us, shouting chest down, hands up, and that's when they arrested us all. It wasn't the only training and extermination camp found in Jalisco. In 2016, another cell of the same cartel was detected operating in Tlaquepaque and Puerto Vallarta. It distributed flyers offering work for a non-existent security company, Cjng. Those recruited were forced to sell drugs or to become hitmen of Cjng. In October 2017, the Attorney General Office rescued 4 more people hooked on scams in the municipality of Puerto Vallarta. They were employed as sales managers or bodyguards. The Cjng National Criminal Investigation Unit took them for training in the Talpa Mountains, 150 kilometers west of Tala, and then disappeared them. At that time, the Attorney General Almaguer stated that it was the same criminal cell operating in Tala, with numbers from Veracruz, Michoacán, and the state of Mexico, and even Jalisco. The disappearance of young people in Tala began long before the prosecutor office discovered those camps. There have been records of missing persons since 2012. One of them is Javier Cisneros Torres. His family has had the courage to be the one and only to make his search public. Javier lived with his mother in the municipality of Tala. His sister Alma remembers the day of his capture. At that time, my brother was living with my mom. My dad had already died. My brother was already in bed watching TV. He left because his neighbors came looking for him. He went into his house, and from there they took him. We were able to see his sweater, his glasses, and his keys, the blood running from the entrance. My brother liked to defend people. Everyone in the neighborhood said he wasn't a bad person. We know that from the kind of life he also lived. We are humble family. He worked at the Tala sugar mill. He didn't have a job for a while because the jobs in Tala are seasonal. He went to paint trees white. They said he was taken by the Taliban, a criminal group of the Cjng. Javier Cisneros' family has been searching for him since 2013. He was taken from a neighbor's house in the municipality of Tala. We know of at least 60 families with missing people in Tala. My sister and I have written them down name by name. I have a friend from high school who contacted me one day and said, "They took my brother. We don't know what happened. My brother used marijuana." I told him, okay, whether he uses marijuana or not, there's no reason to take him. He's missing and we have to find him. If we don't look for them, no one will. I asked him for a photo of his brother in case they find his body in a mass grave. Because of that, we will know if he's alive or dead. There are so many missing people here and no one says a thing. They take young men who have enough courage to do things because they don't just take anyone. Only those who they see will dare to do ugly things, and if you say to them no, they will either kill you or force you to work for them. And if I'm being honest, I don't think my brother would tell them kill me instead of not working for them. But that's what I tell my mom. It will hurt to me to know that he's doing those kind of things, and it truly scares me to find out that he would actually be working in those things. What's happening in the region is an open secret. The Cjng controls Tala and the surrounding area, so those who speak out have to remain anonymous, like Eleazar, who prefers to not speak publicly and instead speaks in his home and explains how many of those young people from his towns were taken. In 2013, we began to hear about young people who had disappeared in the region. They were children of farmers, strong, tough people. who knew the land and therefore knew how to use weapons. They were the thugs and show-offs who liked El Commander's music, the brawlers who went to party or used drugs. We heard of many cases where they went to a party and we never heard from them again. Apparently, some are still alive and they call their families, but they can't look for them or say anything because they're forced to work for Cjng. They weren't kids who wanted to get into the drug trafficking. No, not even because they like the music or the whole narco culture that has been hyped over the years, and because there's actually quite some work in Tala in the sugar mills. Some of them had to be taken away by force. I think they could have been taken to marijuana and poppy plantations in the same region or to other places in the country, because the cartel here is very strong. From here, they supply young people for other regions. I think they've run out of young people with a certain profile, and that's why they're now posting job ads to lure young men from other places. On August 31st, 2014, a mass was held in Tala for the disappeared. Families brought a photo and the name of their loved ones. Everyone was named. Many people came, and 35 photos were posted on a single board, mostly men. Following the mass, the priest received threats and had to leave Tala. Although many families prefer not to report their disappearances, there are 56 reports of missing people in this municipality, according to the National Registry of Missing or Disappeared People. Between 2006 and 2012, there were 2 reports. In 2013, there were 14, and in 2014, 17. For the residents, something happened during those years. The Jalisco New Generation cartel gained strength and controlled the region and needed labor. With the arrest of the Valencia brothers and Ignacio Coronel, the Milenio Cartel, which trafficked drugs in the alliance with the Sinaloa cartel, split into 2 cartels. One of these later became the Jalisco New Generation cartel, which the U.S. Treasury Department named in October 2018 the most powerful drug trafficking organization in Mexico and one of the 5 most dangerous in the world. This group has a presence in at least half of the country and traffics cocaine, methamphetamines in the America, Asia, and even Europe. They break their souls. The disappearance of young people and their subsequent forcing to work for the cartel is not improvised. A resident of Tala who is intimately familiar with the dynamics says that abusing them, torturing them, and then forcing them to kill and incinerate their fellow members is a strategy to break their souls, their inner harmony, so they can become part of the cartel. They go from being victim to victimizers. In his account, Luis describes that to survive, one must earn the captor's trust. In the end, the cartel decides to kill those who don't comply or are no longer useful to its purposes. The camps were camouflaged with leaves so they couldn't be seen from the air. The Jalisco Attorney General Office identified hotspots in the Sculco Mountains and was able to locate them. One day, I saw my opportunity to get close to the manager. I was determined not to be mistreated or die up there if anything was going to happen. I was determined to survive. I started talking to them and standing out, gaining their trust. There were gunmen everywhere. Anyone trying to survive is going to stand out so as not to be attacked. I began to feel fear and doubt the way I had started trying to survive in hell. I thought I had gotten deeper in with those people to avoid the risk of being killed, but at the same time, I threw a noose around my neck because they viewed me with confidence and would see me as a traitor if I didn't return. That time, the worst thing in my life had happened to me. Around 2 o'clock, the voice of El Sapo, the boss of the plaza, came in. "Go ahead, you son of a bitches. Who wants to leave? I'll give you 3,000 for your house to go fuck yourself." At that, some people started raising their hands, warning them if they were sure. There were 3 from the state of Mexico, the chubby guy who arrived with me and whose name I now know is Ignacio, the 2 kids from Durango, a 17-year-old from Guadalajara, and an ex-cop from Zapopan, others whose names I don't know, and El Catracho, who had already returned from vacation. In fact, El Mojo asked if he was sure he wanted to raise his hand, and he said yes, that he wanted to go see his son in Honduras. El Sapo said that see, you'll get there faster. I recognized them all, and there were 14 in total. They sat them down in a shack in front of the dormitories and told them not to move. The rest of us were sitting in another shack. A gray Cjng with the US plates arrived, along with 2 men with pistol. One was El Greña, a 20 or 21-year-old baby-faced El Sapo right-hand man, who shouted to those who wanted to leave, "Come on guys, start fighting each other." And they started to fight each other. Whoever fell was going to die. The first one to fall was called La Jaina. He was short, 170 meters tall. He had a big nose, big face, blonde hair, and he was all over the place. He was a homeless man from Guadalajara who fell to his knees and was knocked out. They shot him. Then El Huachito, a tall man with a big nose, when he saw they were going to shoot him, he shouted no, raising his hands in defense. They shot him twice. Then Nopal, Toño, Chucho, and El 18 opened fire on everyone, including an ex-cop. Last left was a 17-year-old boy with his hands between his legs, head down, rocking. They approached to see him because he was still alive. El Pitayo told him, "These bastards told you to say you wanted to leave." He started his reply by saying yeah, and then the boy cried, "I wanted to see my little sister and my mom." He was shot dead. Among the dead were Ignacio, who arrived with me the first day, and Ernesto, a taco vendor who was also shot in the back, making 15 dead. Those of us who didn't want to leave out of fear were made to carry the bodies. It took us an hour and a half because some of them were so heavy we had to drag them and throw them into the corn cobs. Throwing them into the cornfields is like burning them in a wooded area. They took advantage of the trenches made in the pound by the streams of water that flow through the pines and oaks during the rainy season. They are on the reddish earth, and they threw firewood. Then the bodies piled up and split, and that's when they set them on fire with gasoline until only charred bones and metal objects like buckled and trouser buttons remained. Witnesses who claim to have seen other graves like this but have been unable to report their location report that they have smelled chemicals in them that could be used to accelerate the combustion of the bodies. In one of the camps that were discovered, they located a spot containing firewood and incinerated skeletal remains. Survivor accounts reveal that the Cjng used fire to destroy those who disobeyed or were unfit for the cartel's work. The escape. According to the account Luis gave to the Jalisco prosecutor office, El Sapo called by radio a few days later and said, "Now, you son of a bitches who's going on vacation." Luis thought, "Finally, the moment I've been waiting for has arrived. It's taken me forever to degrade myself and be with these people. I'm going to be free." El Cholo ordered them to form 2 lines and gave them 2,000 pesos each. Night fell and they were brought down the hill in groups of 15. They were going to drop us off in Tala, but things were really heated. There were a lot of police. We walked to a gas station where the army was. Because I stood out, many of them wouldn't leave my side. The army didn't stop us or ask anything. There's a hotel nearby. I went in and checked in. I even took a shower so I could instill confidence in a taxi driver and escape. When I got to the hotel, all the rooms were full. We paid with the money they gave us. I showered, cleaned my clothes with a wet rag. Everyone was knocking on my door, eager to have a beer at the bar. I had planned to leave already when they fell asleep, but they started using meth that the manager had sold them. While they were partying, I grabbed my suitcase and left. I took a taxi, contacted a relative who lives in another country, and told him everything I had been through, that I couldn't go back, and that if they saw me, they'll kill me. They had to help me escape. Then it came out on the news that someone like me had the courage to speak out, and I said to myself, my goal is to live here and bring the peace and tranquility to those who haven't found their loved ones. They're the ones I saw burned to a crisp, and none of their relatives realized how they died or how they disappeared. So I'm going to take the risk and tell my story. Those who returned from the hell received protective measures for testifying against members of Mexico's most powerful cartel. Even so, they had to flee. They changed their identities and were never heard from again. The Jalisco government never reported the cremated individuals whose remains were found in the camps, nor did it conduct further searches for more clandestine graves in the area or attempted to free more young people from those forced recruitment camps. Until this day, the cartel continues to recruit and control the territory, both in the southern Jalisco and on the border from Michoacán. Families of missing people have anonymously reported evidence that their relatives have been taken to forced labor in drug labs or poppy fields. The residents of the Tala area know that the hell to which their relatives and acquaintances have been condemned to. It's not down below, but up there on the tops of the hill. They know it is silence up there and that hell is living through. And from 2006 to the present day, the Mexican government has received reports of the disappearances of more than 40,000 people. And with that being said, we will conclude our episode of Stories from Mexico. This is how it is like to live in a facility of Cjng. This was the story of Luis, a true nightmare.